session for this Tuesday, September 13th of 2022. If you are wishing to give public comment, we have two opportunities to do so, one of which is before the agenda, on agenda items, before we have any discussion, deliberation, or votes. And then there's general comment reserved at the end of our meeting. If you would like to speak in either case, I encourage you to fill out a public comment sheet form at the back of the room and submit that to our city clerk and Mish over there, and you'll be acknowledged and called up to give comment on agenda items at the beginning of our meeting, on general matters at the end of our meeting. You will be given 3 minutes of remarks. Please be sure to provide your address on the public comment form, but I will not be asking, nor will I be sharing your address during public comment. We do need that information, though, for our records. So, and then before we get into public comment and the rest of our meeting, we're going to have a prayer led by our Vice Mayor German. Where is that? Vice Mayor. Is that Mr. Jewett?
What's that?
Mr. Jewett?
No.
Okay. We're going to have a prayer led by our Vice Mayor, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get into the heart of our meeting. So if you'd care to join us in prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, I ask you to stand if you're able to do so, and move into caps. Thank you.
Right, let us bow our heads. Father God, we thank you today for this beautiful day, for allowing us to come together as we assemble in peace and do the work that you have called us to do and placed us here to do. We ask that you guide our wisdom that you have given us and use it wisely to make sound decisions where it will impact everyone equally and financially. We ask that you look over the city of Muskegon. We ask that you protect the city of Muskegon, the residents, the children, and we just ask that you continue to just give us directions. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Vice Mayor German.
Yeah. Welcome.
All right, Madam Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Ramsey,
Here.
Vice Mayor German,
Here.
Commissioner Gorman,
Here.
Commissioner Emery,
Here.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Here.
Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Hood.
Here. Thank you. All right, so public comment on agenda items. We have Mr. Derek Olson joining us from the Lakeside neighborhood, wishing to speak on the Adelaide Point as well as our Shoreline Drive road diet pilot.
Yeah, can I talk about one at the end? Can I just have one time now and one at the end? Okay.
Oh, you're welcome to speak about both now, and you're welcome to speak again at the end if you'd like.
Cool.
But you'll have 3 minutes right now and 3 minutes again at the end.
Thank you, Derek Olson. I am here today just because I have watched the Adelaide Point video. The developer has made himself very available. The guys have done a wonderful job. It's everything you could want in a development of the future. It provides for public access, it's green buildings, and there's a lot of components to it that I think we ought to, everywhere in the country, and especially in Muskegon, hold developers accountable to. My question is only, how much development do we want? I understand that this is a very good development, and that they're really nice partners, and that they're going to do a lot of nice things, and that there's a lot of cookies. I get it that we're going to give the sheriff's department an office, and the boat's going to be in the middle of the lake. I like that, but I also see a gigantic scaping marina in the middle of our beautifully just cleaned up lake. My fear is that we're going to replace the industrial pollution that we just spent 40 years and $80 million cleaning up out of our lake. My fear is that we're going to fill it with piers and boats and docks on every shore, and we're going to replace it with the industrial pollution of this day. And I get it, and there's a lot of support, and I don't want to be the person who's like naysaying this wonderful supportive thing, but they are going to haul out a mountain of lake bottom, 100 cubic yards. It would bury City Hall and the block around it, 100 feet high in lake bottom. And then we're going to pour in cement and build a giant breakwater into this lake that we just spent all this time cleaning up. And they're going to come, more of these people. And I agree that these guys are very nice and that the development is going to be beautiful. But how much of it do we need? And where do we draw the line? And for me, we need time. I don't think we're taking enough time. We just got our lake off the list of crappy lakes in the country, and now instantly we're going to build giant waterscapes of docks, floating docks. And I understand that you can fish and you can walk and you can do these things, but how much should we do? And I hope that this commission takes the stewardship of Muskegon Lake and the hard work. My grandfather was a county and city commissioner for 50 years. He helped fund and save our shoreline. He spent most of his adult life fighting to protect this lake, and I just don't want to see us do the same thing that the previous generations did by building and filling the lake with things that aren't natural and that isn't pristine. And so, again, I believe that the developers have done a great job in proposing this. I think that the public access is wonderful. But what are we doing to our lake that we just spent so many years and so much money cleaning up? And so there's my 3 minutes. I knew I was getting close, and I can't believe that unanimously this commission would plow forward without taking some more time. And once you make that private property out on the water as a big floating dock, you can't get it back. It's real hard.
Thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your perspective. All right, next up we have Laura Swenson joining us from the Nelson neighborhood, wishing to speak on Adelaide Point as well. Welcome.
I'm not here as Nelson neighborhood. I'm here as a
No.
resident.
No, just as a Nelson neighborhood
West
resident.
Michigan. Yes. Okay. I just want to say we do need to take time. And even though there's been lots of discussion about Adelaide Point, I'm not sure. I've waded through the paperwork. I'm not qualified to give an opinion as to, is this, what's the impact on the aquatic system that we're disrupting? I'm not qualified to answer that. I really feel we have resources. We have people. We can study our lake. We can say what will be better. And I think there are definitely opportunities that we should invite private developers to join with the city. But in that, we are giving city property, we are giving city resources, we are giving brownfield tax abatements. The residents need to have an opportunity to understand, number one, exactly what it is that's going to happen. And then we have a right to monitor, is it in fact what was planned? We don't know a lot about many of the developers that we are entering into a partnership with. We haven't seen finished projects that we can go to and say, oh, that's what it looks like. That's all. We need more time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Next up, we have Craig Person joining us from the McLaughlin neighborhood. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to provide remarks.
Thank you. It's very interesting that we are at a point where a lot of information's out there. Sometimes you can get information overload. The sand in that basin is foundry sand. That the space out in front of that lake is foundry sand. The dredging is a foundry sand, and it lays host to invasive species of plants. When Adelaide Point removes that sand, they'll be removing those invasive species and replanting something nobody's doing in the water. I think that's really significant. The thoughtfulness, the energy, I had the distinction of creating a video and talking to the experts. And that gave me more insight than I expected to have on the attention to the environment and to the outlying community. So I just want to encourage everyone, there's a lot of information out there. Everyone's very interested in seeing the best for Muskegon Lake. And I think that this is a good thing. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us tonight. That's it for agenda items. Is there anyone else that I have forms for? Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on an agenda item before we move on? All right. Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda. Are there any items on there that you wish to have removed and considered for separate deliberation and vote? Commissioner St. Clair?
Items B and G.
All right.
Item J.
If there are no others, I'd entertain a motion.
Oh, okay.
Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, I move to accept the agenda, consent agenda minus item B, E, and J.
B, G, and J?
Was it B, E, and J?
G.
G. B, G. Okay. Okay. I thought you had called E, I'm sorry. But I would like to pull E off as well.
All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner or Vice Mayor German to adopt the consent agenda as presented minus items B, E, G, and J. May I have a support? We got a support by Commissioner Ramsey. We're going to go to roll call on the consent agenda minus those 4 items.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Before we go to those other items, I do want to, I probably should have done that before we voted. I do just want to recognize a couple items on here. One of which I want to extend my appreciation to our DPW director and Leo Evans and his team for moving forward with that Power My Fleet enrollment. We had talked some weeks ago about likely going to be bringing a climate emergency declaration to the city in the future and then developing a climate action plan connected to that. And so he said, well, electric vehicle build out's going to be part of it. Let's get going. So he has taken that step already to move us forward in that direction. So I just wanted to give my appreciation to him and his team for moving that forward. And also, I'd like to extend appreciation to our city manager for working with the various different, our interim city manager, for working with the various unions and locals throughout our organization on updating our policy to formally, not only us as a city recognizing, because we've already recognized by resolution the Juneteenth federal holiday, but also incorporating that into our list of federal holidays in which we will have City Hall closed and our staff will be able to take that day off and enjoy it and celebrate the freedom that that day is meant to recognize. And I think that's incredibly important that we celebrate that day. So thank you. All right. Not new business. We are going to start with item B, flag policy. Commissioner St. Clair.
I move to adopt the updated flag policy.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Hood, to adopt the amended flag policy as presented. Commissioner St. Clair.
I don't have any questions about this. I wanted to make sure that the public is aware of it because it is a significant departure from what we have done historically. I don't know, Madam Clerk, do you want to explain a little bit about where this came from? Or would you rather legal counsel?
I'm thinking maybe our legal counsel.
Sure. Earlier this year, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a case involving the city of Boston, rendered its opinion as to flag policies and whether flags on a pole that is used for any and every potential entity is thus then a public forum, and the city has almost no rights. Alternatively, what you can have is a government speech, which is only those entities that the government agrees with, will fly their flags. The advice from our office was you got to do one or the other. You can't do both. And I think staff has worked on the policy. I think commission has reviewed it in a work session, I think some time ago, no, it's going to be government speech. It's our speech. And because of that, we limit the number and the types and the criteria of the flag that will be going on that pole. You're right, Commissioner, it is a very different posture than what the city has done in the past. Basically, I would suggest that the Supreme Court decision made us all rethink what is it that we want on our flagpoles.
So I'm just going to read the policy. It's very brief so that people understand what the change is. The purpose: to provide a policy to fly flags on city-owned or occupied property or facilities. City Commission consideration and decision: the flying of flags of the United States of America, State of Michigan, the County of Muskegon, the City of Muskegon, and sister cities of the City of Muskegon flag, and visiting dignitaries from the embassy or consulate that are formally acknowledged by the mayor or city commission are permissible and may be flown at city property as authorized by city staff. The flying of any other flag is not permissible. This includes flags from other countries, flags recognizing a cause, flags recognizing a festival, flags recognizing ethnicity, etc. So that is what we are voting on. And I just wanted the public to know the what and the why, because this is something that we talk about quite a bit. So.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Do you have anything to ask or add, Commissioner Hood, is supporting of this motion?
Well, I support it. And as I said before, in the previous years, we went over this also, and we had came to an agreement that we weren't going to fly any other flags. And it was a different board, but there was discussion, and that's what we had came up with. So I'm glad to see that we went back to that policy, and I support it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hood. Commissioners, any other questions or comments you would like to share? No? Commissioner
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair, for pulling this, because I do think it's important that the public understands, especially as we move forward in the year. Former requests will not be accepted. I too support this policy, and I just want to mention there are other ways we as a commission and a city can show support for causes that we care about, and I would love to invite the commissioners to join me in those opportunities. So causes that we have expressed support for in the past with the flag, I want to find a creative solution that may be more appropriate, that we can still do that. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Gorman. And if there's nothing else, then we'll go to roll call.
Commissioner Emery?
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Yes.
Vice Mayor German?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Next up, item E, Shoreline Drive Engineering Amendment, Vice Mayor German.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the amendment request with Progressive AE for Shoreline Drive Traffic Engineering.
Support.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor German, supported by Commissioner Emery, to authorize staff to approve the amendment request with a Progressive AE for Shoreline Drive Traffic Engineering.
Director Evans, thank you. Could you just give the public a little update of what's going on? And I know this has been a hot topic with this Shoreline Drive study that's going on. So just kind of enlighten them and give the commission an update on where you're at with this.
Sure. We solicited bids for the traffic control work, which is the next item up for discussion here. We broke the bids down into 3 phases, with 2 of the phases planned for this fall, and then 1 phase planned for next spring. The 2 phases this fall would each be roughly 2 to 3 weeks in duration. Phase 1 would be, and I can't remember which lane is first, but phase 1 would be a right lane closure both directions, and phase 2 is a left lane closure both directions, or vice versa. During that work in the fall, we would complete just some regular scheduled routine maintenance on the roadway. There's some concrete patches that need replaced, just some work like that that would occur on any other roadway. During that time, This engineering amendment proposes to collect some preliminary data, since the road closure is the exact same limits that the Phase 3 pilot would encompass next spring. Recognizing that that data is probably not everything we want to see, it does give us a little bit of insight into what's working or not working while we've got this other closure in place. This engineering amendment essentially adds some cost to the engineer, since they now have to do data collection twice during 2 separate pilots of this project. And they had some costs incurred to split the project into multiple phases for design and bidding. So I think it addresses it pretty well. Yeah, so the work this fall, if approved, would kind of maybe take shape around the start of October, probably through the first part of November. And then the third phase, the larger pilot next spring, would occur probably mid-April through, say, mid-July, in that time frame.
Okay, and I guess my next question would be the whole scope of the project. What is the significant purpose for this road diet and closing these lanes? That expressway serves many in the community and out-of-town travelers to get to one point to another without going through the inner city, other neighborhoods. And part of the conversations that we talked about in the past was traffic being directed toward like the Western Avenue, I should say, and Muskegon. Will there be a study on those also? I mean, because with this change here, some of those drivers may go within those neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. So, the purpose of the study is really to drive safety on the roadway and hopefully reduce speeds and reconnect that neighborhood to the waterfront, where now you've got that large roadway kind of dividing them. To this traffic study point, the work that Progressive AE does not only is intended to count vehicles and speed and cars on Shoreline Drive, it's intended to measure diversion, so alternative routes, to say what was the traffic before we made this change on Muskegon and Webster, and then what's the traffic on Muskegon and Webster while these are in place. Is there a noticeable difference? Is there increased speeds? Those kind of things, so we can understand that if these changes were made in a long-term sense on Shoreline Drive, what impacts would that have on the rest of our road network?
Okay, and that's what I'm looking at holistically. I think long-term, how this will play out, and that's been a major concern to the public as well as myself, and that's why I voted against it. Have there been, I guess, other ideas on how we could keep that Shoreline Drive flowing with traffic like it is and connect it to the downtown in other ways?
Yeah, I know we addressed a number of potential alternatives in a FAQ document that's available on our website. If anybody wants to go see it, we can share that link. We looked at things like adding a pedestrian bridge, or building tunnels, or some other ways that don't require people to necessarily cross the street, but still can give that connectivity. There's downsides and cost implications to a lot of those. The one that jumps out at me right now as I'm thinking of it was a pedestrian bridge, just due to the proximity of the railroad, would have to go over the railroad and over the highway. To clear over a railroad, I believe they require 25 foot of clearance vertically, whereas a bridge over a highway is more like 15 feet of clearance. So that just makes it more costly and much more difficult to obtain any kind of accessible access in that sense. So the preliminary modeling that's been done really suggests that there should not be a substantial impact to this, to this pilot, should it be implemented in the long term. But this pilot really intends to try to prove that that modeling is correct or it isn't correct. You can model whatever you want on a computer, and sometimes it'll say one thing, but reality can be a total different scenario. So this hopefully gives us a little peek at what that reality will be, to see if it supports the model or it does not.
All right, thank you, Director Evans.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German. Commissioner, do you have any other questions on this item? We do have the next item that's going to be discussed and deliberated and voted on will also be related to the Shoreline Drive road diet pilot study. So if you want to engage in any questions now, or you can hold them to the next item. All right. And then we're going to do the roll call on this item.
Commissioner,
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German,
No.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up, item G, Shoreline Drive traffic control. Commissioner St. Clair.
I move to authorize staff to accept the bid from Give 'em a Break Safety only for Phase 1 and Phase 2 traffic control during the fall of 2022 in the amount of $16,825 in conjunction with the Shoreline Road pilot, and delay a decision on Phase 3 traffic control until the results of the fall pilot are available for consideration.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Ramsey. I do not have the language of that one right in front of me. We revised this. So just a little bit of background. I had spoken with staff about the prospect of breaking these pieces up into doing Phase 1 this fall, piggybacking on road maintenance that needs to be done anyhow, collecting data at the same time, then reassessing and making a determination on whether to proceed based upon the data collected then on the sensibility of proceeding with the subsequent phase, the fuller phase, in the spring going into the summer. And so thank you, Commissioner St. Clair, for bringing that motion forward, reflecting such. And so, Commissioner St. Clair, I will open it up to you to begin this conversation.
Let's understand. So as the mayor said, this would give us the opportunity to take the initial study that is happening while the road is already closed, with no impact to the community, measure that data and see if we're going to have a lot of issues, or if we are not going to have a lot of issues before we move forward with Phase 3. And that just makes sense to me to one, measure while we are already doing work and that is closed. You're already going to be inconvenienced. We might as well track how you will be inconvenienced just because construction has to happen.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Just so there's, before I go into any other commissioners, so that we can understand, because we're mentioning Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, so folks understand what all that entails. Phase 1 and 2 are together in what we call Phase 1, and that happening this fall. It's broken out to Phase 1 is where is it the outer lanes are shut down first, and then Phase 2, the inner lanes would be shut down. And it's the reason why is because you need to shut down each of the lanes at some point in order to do the road maintenance on them. And so, but that's collectively what we're referring to as the fall Phase 1. And then the Phase 2, where it's the fuller one, aka Phase 3 in this, this
Sorry about that.
agenda would be in the spring and the summer if we decide to proceed. So I just wanted to clarify, given that we've got a number of different phases that we're referencing. Commissioner Ramsey, you supported that item. Do you have any remarks right now or questions?
I did. I don't have any questions. I want to thank Leo and the team for all the work that they've done around this. I know that it has been an absolute nightmare for most of us sitting here and over at DPW. I would also like to take the time, unpopular opinion, to remind my neighbors that we're all here for what we're calling increased transparency. And best as I can tell, this is a benefit of that. These conversations, this opportunity for a test, for a pilot, for whatever you want to call it, right? We decided as a team that we needed to get out there and see what was going to happen, so that we could make an informed decision. And even us putting that out there as an opportunity has received so much criticism from neighbors that don't understand why we would do even a test. And it's so that we can make an informed decision. And I think that it's very important to remember that moving forward, if our neighbors are requiring us to be transparent and to be held accountable, that these are the kinds of things that we do as local leadership to make sure that that happens. And so I would again encourage everyone to reach out to us directly, to stay off your keyboard warrior phase of Facebook, and get proper education and understand the opportunities that lay before us as a community, so that even if we disagree, we can do so respectfully as we move forward. So thank you to everyone who has reached out with questions and concerns and comments. They are gratefully appreciated. And again, to the staff who have worked so diligently on this project, and to my colleagues for fielding the emails and the phone calls and the flip-offs. I think that there's an opportunity here that we will be able to make some very data-informed decisions with the Shoreline Drive efforts based on what comes out of these studies. So thank you, Leo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Commissioners, any other questions or comments on this item at this time? Does everyone understood how we're proceeding with this particular motion of it broken up and then piggybacking on the maintenance, studying it, collecting the data, and then revisiting it as a body here with staff on how to proceed?
Just so I'm clear, is the expectation that phase 3 would come back to the commission for approval? It is within approval limits, purchasing policy wise, but
yes, absolutely.
That's what I assumed. Just want to make sure that's said out loud so everybody hears that as well.
Yes, it's very
so
clear
will be
that
back.
After the data's been collected through this fall, that will be compiled, any analysis completed, and then the findings shared with the commission and our community, and then we will have an opportunity to reassess and decide if it's sensible to proceed with the fuller length, more full-fledged portion of it next spring into the summer. And right now we're anticipating the second half of spring into the first half of summer. So we're able to get, if we end up doing all of the phases, we'd get fall conditions, spring conditions, and summer conditions. So a lot of different data. Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. For Director Evans, what would a successful study look like on this project?
A successful study?
Yes.
It would show that there was no negative impact to other areas that couldn't be mitigated in some way, and that any delay on Shoreline Drive was within, what we're willing to accept for parameters.
Okay, could you,
Do you have something to add, Manager Mike Sell?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to say that I look at this as whatever data we get is good. Because all we really want to do is understand what's going to happen when we close these lanes. So to me, success is just getting the study completed and having data that really captures what's happening.
Thank you, Manager Mike Sell. Do you have follow-up?
yes, because I would think if you're going to do a study, you would at least have a goal in mind, something that you're looking forward to say that this is a legitimate reason to close the lane and do this, slow the traffic down, or how it connects with, the downtown. And that's the reason, rationale for my question there. And I just don't see a significance here because I guess the answer didn't fit the question, and all.
Thank you, Vice
I'm
Mayor
not saying
German.
that you're not doing an excellent job, and I, commend you and your staff for what you do, and you're the experts at this. But looking at it from, my perspective.
I think ultimately, in terms of what is a success with this pilot study and the temporary closure of lanes and what impact that would have on traffic flow, I think that would be dependent on each of our perspective. Staff's going to have their perspective, and I'm very curious, and I think it's a good question to ask. Like from your perspective, staff, our DPW director or our manager Mike Sell, what is an acceptable level of impact on traffic flow there? And perhaps they might have one answer, and you'll have another answer, and I'll have another answer of like, well, I'm okay. It's an A level condition right now. I'm okay with it dropping down to a B. If that means that we're going to be able to unlock a whole lot of benefit and value and opportunities for our residents and guests to our city, whereas someone else might be like, I'm okay with a C. I don't think any of us would be okay with a D, but hey, each of us have our own perspectives and opinions on that. So, Commissioner Ramsey, before I go to you though, I think Commissioner Hood, did you have something to ask Rad right now?
No.
Okay.
No, it was
we can come back to you if something else pops up. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, so I want to agree with you, Mr. Mayor, but I think that there also is a specific connotation that's being lent to the question that I want to make sure that we circumvent and that we help our neighbors to understand that we're not asking Director Evans to say what is the best outcome of this study. Is it to shut down Shoreline Drive, one of the lanes, or not? And really to echo what Ms. Mike Sell said, it's that any data that we are collecting creates a beneficial study. because we don't know what we don't know. And the point of this study is to learn what we do not know about the entire situation, good or bad. It could say that we don't need to close any of the lanes, and then half of the town would be excited and the rest of us would cuss people out. Flip that. Conversely, it could say, sure, close them all down and put a walkway through there because nobody takes it. Same thing would happen. Any data that we collect is more data than we had and helps us to make informed decisions about the roadway itself. And so I don't want us to get into the weeds about what we see as a good outcome, because the outcome is having the data for our interpretation. And I didn't want our neighbors in TV land to mistake any of that. There isn't an answer that Leo has that's going to say that is going to color the study or how the data is collected or interpreted. It really is about what comes out of it in numbers, black and white. That's the benefit of the study.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Commissioner Hood.
Yes, I think what I just wanted to make sure is that the public understood that this is a study and that we're fact finding. And once that fact finding is done, then a decision can be made. So that's all I wanted to get across, and I think that got across with everybody's comments. So that's why I was just pass me by. But
it's always good to reinforce.
Yeah.
So thank
And
you.
I like the
Commissioner
term
Hood.
fact finding. I think that that's super important and makes it very standard. We all know what fact finding is, and so thank you for that. It really takes something that may not be maybe seems like common knowledge to us, right? Because we've been reading these documents and having these conversations for months now. But we're just out there fact finding.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I'm viewing it as well. I am very keen on data-driven decision making, and so we need to collect that data and conduct the analysis. But to kind of this question of what's a successful outcome, and it's so many variables involved, and we need to be monitoring that, and not only the traffic flow on Shoreline Drive, but how traffic changes and throughout our transit system. Are we seeing an excessive amount of traffic on our neighborhood roads on Webster and Muskegon? I don't think any of us want to return Muskegon and Webster to what it once was. We're very happy with those being returned to neighborhood streets and being calmer and being more conducive to connecting our inner city neighborhood of Nelson neighborhood and the others, bringing them into our downtown. And so we've made that progress over the years of connecting that to our downtown, and now we're looking at extending the interconnectivity to our waterfront. We've spent, as has been mentioned earlier, and was mentioned last night, the $80+ million that have been spent on cleaning up Muskegon Lake and cleaning up our shoreline after decades of industrialization and the hardening of the shoreline and pollution and contaminants. And so it's been restored, it's been cleaned up. When Shoreline Drive was first conceptualized, the lakefront still was hardened and industrialized. It is not in the condition it is now. We were not developing or orienting our city to the waterfront, to that shoreline back in the 90s and prior. As you can see from the hotel, our hotel downtown, now the Delta, originally was a Harbor Hilton, and that didn't face the lake. There wasn't any other city probably that's on the waterfront that didn't have it facing the water. But it's because at that time it was a polluted industrialized lake, and so there wasn't as much emphasis or impetus for us to connect to that waterfront. And now, after huge concerted effort by people at the local level and the state level and the federal level to clean it up and to restore it, we have a greater need to connect our downtown to that waterfront, to connect our neighborhoods, to connect Nelson, to connect McLaughlin, to connect Angel, to connect Jackson Hill, to connect NIMS, to connect them to that magnificent body of water that is being restored, cleaned up, and about to be delisted from the Great Lakes areas of concern. And so that's where I see that benefit and value from, that enhanced interconnectivity, the improved pedestrian and cycling safety, and the possibilities for reprogramming of portions of Shoreline Drive that could be used for a bike lane, which is different than a bike path, just to be clear. People keep on saying, well, why do you want a bike lane? You have a bike path already. A bike lane is about transit. A bike path is more about recreation. That can be used for transit and commuting as well. But there are distinctions. And with potential reprogramming of a portion of Shoreline Drive, there's also opportunities for parks, for parking where necessary, for staging of festivals and events. And so there's a lot of opportunity that could come to fruition. I don't know that this is a foregone conclusion that this is the best way to move forward in accomplishing all of those objectives of enhanced interconnectivity between our core downtown and our surrounding neighborhoods with the waterfront. That's going to remain our objective, period, I think. Regardless if this road reconfiguration is going to get us there, or if we need to do intersection repairs that have been highlighted within our Imagine Muskegon Lake plan, or if we need to do pedestrian overpasses or tunnels. I think all of those options need to be considered and explored, and will be factored into our decision making, will be factored into my decision. I don't want to speak for you all, but those will all help me decide how we proceed. But I think it is fundamental that we collect that data in the first place, do that fact finding, as Commissioner Hood said, and take an incremental and conscientious approach where we're doing this on piggybacking on this road maintenance, reassessing, and then deciding, is it sensible to proceed with the next phase? And then if after that we think that there's merits to moving forward with that, after considering these other options, then it's going to be extensive and concerted engagement with our residents and other stakeholders throughout this city and the greater Muskegon area, because as we know, this doesn't just affect our residents. While our focus may be on our residents, it doesn't just affect our residents. And so we have to be mindful of that greater impact as well. And I was happy to hear when MDOT was here at our open house earlier this year, I think it was the beginning of last month, he mentioned gauging that impact on businesses, not just businesses in our downtown, but businesses in the area. And so I thought that was reassuring to hear that MDOT's not just looking about traffic, but they're interested in impact. I think that has to be considered. So I appreciate us wanting to do that fact finding. I appreciate us exploring how to enhance and expand that access to our wonderful waterfront and improve interconnectivity. And I think this incremental approach is the right way to go. So thank you, Leo. Thank you to our planning department, our DPW, our manager, Mike Sell, and everyone involved with moving this process forward, and to my fellow commissioners and to the public for asking your questions. There are so many legitimate concerns out there. I understand it. I drive Shoreline Drive every single day, multiple times a day. It gives me heartburn. Without a doubt, moving this forward, and I completely understand why people have reservations and concerns. But the way I perceive it is that there are people smarter than me, there are people with more experiences than me that have indicated that this is possible. The computational modeling suggests that this is possible without excessive negative impacts, and now we're collecting that data to understand if that's truly the case or not. So again, thank you to all concerned. This is just one step forward, and if we decide that it's something that we want to pursue after all that, it's going to be many more steps after that of engaging with our community and planning, one that's going to take years. There's nothing imminent. On that note, and I just thought I was about to wrap up, but I do have a question then. When we're talking previously about this could take several years, if we decide we want to move forward with this, and after all the data's done, all the analysis done, and then we want to move forward with this, and before it was mentioned it could take 6 to 8 years to actually do this, what's the timeline for reconstruction, or like basically the life of these roads, because they were built? And one of the things I hear from folks is like, you've spent millions of dollars back in the 90s on building these roads out. Like, is that going to be generally coinciding if we do decide, and after, if it's sensible to proceed, is it generally going to be coinciding where we'd need to reconstruct the roads anyhow? So if we end up not having one lane or 2 lanes, that's going to save money on reconstruction at that time. Can you have any sense or share about that right now?
Yeah, I know that I don't believe MDOT has any program or project actually scheduled for those roads, but just in generally speaking, you build a new road with a design life of 30 years. So how old is Shoreline Drive today? Most of it's in the 20s and probably has not seen any substantial work other than just small routine maintenance. So it's conceivable that there will be projects in the 5 to 10 year window that are more light maintenance and extend that life, but it is coming at some point that'll need to be redone.
Okay, so it'd be sensible for us to be exploring this now, since we know it's going to be many years in the making to realize, to coincide with potential replacement of that road. Are you going to add something, Manager Mike Sell?
Yes, just in conversations with MDOT, the Department of Transportation that owns this roadway, they certainly have expressed to us that even if we decide that we want to move forward with something bigger than a pilot, that they would likely want us to start the process with a situation where we didn't remove any pavement. So we can, we do some reconfiguration, of course, to, get all the traffic on one of the bounds of the roadway, but that we don't actually remove the pavement to make sure, again, that things are going to work well before we commit to a total change. So I think that's likely as well.
Seems perfectly sensible. Another incremental approach and fail safe in that, it's not working out. It can be undone easily and at limited cost. Yeah.
Just one more thing.
Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Director Evans, I know there's a couple different type of traffic studies, and it doesn't state here on the agenda what type of studies it is. Just looking up a traffic impact study, a traffic impact analysis, or a traffic operational analysis. Does those terms sound familiar to you, or depending on what type of study that we're looking at? And
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, get a logic about, what it is, because when they talk about studies and traffic impact studies, they're talking about the purpose of identifying the purpose of development and also safety. So, which type of study are we looking at here?
It's not, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it fits directly into any of those categories. It takes pieces and parts of each of those different studies to, try to advise what the operational condition of that roadway should be and what the impacts of any change would be. Those studies, in my experience, are generally something that gets done before a brand new roadway gets built to try to determine what that, you've got nothing there today. What will it look like in 20 years after it's been there, and how many people are going to divert to it? So.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's something else in terms of the future. I think that's something else for us to take into consideration after we get all the data analysis is forecasting for the future, the growth of our city. So that's certainly something that needs to be taken into consideration. And, I have heard from folks in terms of why are we trying to connect to the waterfront too? There's not anything over there, or, but Muskegon Lake's over there in my mind, which is a magnificent body of water. And we are continuously endeavoring to enhance and expand access to Muskegon Lake and our shoreline. And so maybe it's not, there's more to come. There's more to come. So thank you. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Nope. All right. Roll call then.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German,
No.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up, we have item J, rezoning of 2043, 2051, 2065, and 2075 Dowd to form-based code urban residential. I believe that was Commissioner Emery.
Thank you. I move to approve the request to rezone the properties at 2043, 2051, 2065, and 2075 Dowd from R3 High Density Single Family Residential to form-based code urban residential.
Support?
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Emery, supported by Commissioner Ramsey, to approve the request to rezone the properties at 2043, 2051, 2065, and 2075 Dowd from R3 High Density Single Family Residential to form-based code urban residential. Commissioner Emery.
Yeah, I just wondering if we have more information about the duplexes that will be built there.
We do. We have Mr. Duzendang in attendance
Awesome.
tonight, and he's got some renderings he would like to share. So
Wonderful.
Excellent. Welcome, Mr. Dusendang. Thank you. Let me just give you your full name and the organization that you're with.
West Urban Properties. I apologize for not being here at the meeting yesterday. I had the weeks mixed up. So I did prepare two designs that I'll pass through. They're just a three-page design with elevations and floor plans and parking. And I know that was one of the biggest concerns was, is it on-street parking? No, it will be up to 3 vehicles in front of each duplex, one inside the one-stall garage, which is extended to 24 feet, which is almost a double garage. And then you have 2 outside, one in front of the garage and one in front of the porch with a divider between them, starting at, on one design is 2 feet and on the other design is 4 feet. So it'll be 3 parking spaces generated per side. 6 total per building.
Thank you, Mr. Dusendang. Commissioner Emery, do you have follow-up questions for?
No, I'm just waiting for him to get passed down to me.
We can have Ann put them up on the screen.
Yes. Is this the same?
No, they're different.
Oh, okay.
Different design.
Both units are 2 bedroom, 1 bath. Approximately just shy of about 850 square feet. They're both, all 4 lots are quite shallow, quite small. They're about a 50 by 50 building note only. The idea with here is to have the back access to Camp Bell Field play area. There's not a whole lot of lawn in the front, but behind and also in the Camp Bell yard, there's plenty of room for recreation.
Will they have basements?
These ones do not have basements. These were designed with the thought of the affordable home design. So these ones here are on slabs, which will also help because they will be 0 step visible units. All 8 of them will have 0 step.
Excellent.
That's wonderful.
Yes, Commissioner Emery, follow-up.
So is your intent to that these will remain always rental properties or eventually maybe owner occupied?
Well, in the pilot program, there is a possibility for an owner occupied. They just have to meet the requirements. But yeah, so they can be owner occupied and or they can stay as rentals for the full term. Because in the pilot program, we have a 20-year term with the tax abatements and all of the special uses and also the rent. It was the rental on them was we started out at I think it was 2019 was at 1,300 and then obviously rents have gone up with due to inflation and cost of construction.
Well, thank you for being here tonight.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Ramsey, I saw you with your red pen down there.
No, it's because I dropped it. But I mean, thanks so much for being here tonight and for answering our questions with these beautiful photos and for them being and for being ready to address the needs of our community. Flexible, like we are.
Any other questions or remarks? Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here, Mr. Dusending. In regards to the parking, these don't have alleys or anything in the back, right? There's no in that property.
No, sir.
Okay, and that was one of my concerns with the density there is the parking. When I asked the question at our work session, and I like the rendering of the drawings, and I've seen your work around, the community here, and you've done some excellent work there.
To kind of give an idea too about the parking, if you look at what we did in Webster, it's the same idea where we had 3 vehicles to be able to fit inside. And every time I've ever been out here, I've never seen anybody utilizing street parking on Webster. Possibility of a visitor maybe is across the street, but as far as the residents go, they're all parked inside the garage and on the driveways. So it's the same theory.
Yeah, and I like the approach that as Director Franz stated yesterday in the work session, that we're just looking at zoning a small portion, not the whole neighborhood, so that the community would get an understanding and know what we're looking at here. I think doing it in increments like that would probably give them a better approach on the direction that the city's looking to move in, and you as a builder will, build these projects. And so, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions or remarks? All right. Last night during a work session, I had inquired about being staff-driven versus being driven by you who intend on purchasing and developing this, and just the matter of cost, paying for that process of the rezoning. It's my understanding that you are willing to shoulder that cost for.
I'll give you $499.
One more, and you get to the 500 mark. So.
Is the partnership it's been fantastic with the city. All of you commissioners and also you as mayor, it's been a great process. We've had a good time. I gladly would, even though it wasn't my idea to put the duplexes on there, I'll gladly pay the $500. A loan, but I'll gladly pay it. I'm teasing.
All right. Happy to hear that. And I do like to see some duplexes being built. They can help to improve the affordability dynamic. So I'm interested to see these come online and how they do, and perhaps inspire more duplexes. I know right up the street there's also a project of duplexes that's coming online and had languished a bit due to supply chain constraints and whatnot, but I think that's coming back online. It's a different project and different developer.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
And there's some lots they're perfect for them, and these 4 particular lots really are perfect for them because of the field behind, and they're such shallow lots already. So you're really wasting the width and the density by not doing it. But absolutely, there's several lots, even in Nelson, where we did get form-based code. If you notice, I haven't put any duplexes on anywhere in Nelson. We just haven't come across the exact right lots for that. So it's not just the idea of putting it in for density. It needs to belong. And I wouldn't have committed to this. My name is on this project. I'm the owner of them. It's my investment. And I wouldn't have committed to it if I didn't feel that this was a perfect spot for trying out the duplexes. And it's not changing the whole neighborhood to form-based code. It's just changing just this one section.
Yep.
And if it works, we can do more. And if it doesn't, okay, well, now we know.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Dusendang. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair, Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up, we have new business, Adelaide Point Cooperative Use Agreement.
Go ahead.
May we-
This in, or do you want a motion?
Yeah. So let me proceed. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the updated cooperative use agreement and rescission of the former development agreement for the Adelaide Point development.
Support.
All right, a motion by Commissioner Ramsey, supported by Commissioner Hood, to approve the updated cooperative use agreement and rescind the development agreement formerly approved on October 26, 2021 for the Adelaide Point development. Manager Mike Sell.
Thanks. So we'll have the developer come up, but I can just lead in on this. So the commission had approved an agreement, a development agreement with Adelaide Point back in October of 2021. And there have been some changes and we've had continued conversations. And so we want to rescind that original agreement. And we've not completely started from scratch, but we're just kind of taking a different approach to the agreement. So the idea here is that we start out with this cooperative use agreement, which really just outlines how we're going to share property and make some of the currently private property public and allow some private uses on our currently public property. There will be additional steps after this that will be more about brownfield agreement and certain phases. We'll do the project in phases and bring those to you one phase at a time. But right now, we're just looking to get approval on this agreement, this cooperative use agreement. So I know we spoke about this agreement last night at length, and there was some questions and suggestions made for changes. So I just kind of wanted to go over that with all of you. So what's in front of you tonight for a vote is a little bit different than what was in the original packet. So I've got on the screen here for you the changes that we've made. So paragraph 2 talks about the city property and access to that property. and there was some conversation about exclusive use of the city property. So this is the change that we have made. So essentially, APQ will have use and operation of the boat launching and dock facilities on the city property during the term of the agreement. So there is no exclusive use given to the private developer. Questions on that before I move on? Okay. There were a couple of other just anomalies. So there was a paragraph in here about insurance, and there was a requirement that APQ have a certain class of financial rating, and we just removed that requirement. So that had not been defined previously. There's also a later paragraph, let me find it, where we talk about this former agreement and rescinding it. And so I just added in the date of that agreement. And then we have the exhibit that shows the properties. There was quite a lot of conversation about the map. So you can see this map, I think, depicts a little bit more clearly which is the city property and the APQ property. And what I think is helpful about this is it's overlaid on the plan unit development maps. So I appreciate Mr. Liesma for getting that updated so that was more clear for everybody. Questions on that? And then lastly, the easement agreement had this header on it that it was exhibit only, do not sign, and I just missed taking that off, but that actually has been updated. It is not?
No, that was intentionally put there.
Okay. Well, I guess I was not aware of that.
It is there because we don't want it signed. It will be signed at the time of closing,
okay,
where there will be a separate document.
Okay. But this document has been discussed with all of us. We all agree to it.
It is the one that will be signed.
Okay.
But you can't sign the exhibit.
Gotcha. Okay. That was all that I know of the changes, unless there was something else that I missed.
Yeah, thank you for updating this, and appreciate removing the reference of exclusivity, which was not our intent, and providing that updated map as well. And that helps clarify, which is welcome. And just to speak on this process a little bit, and you're welcome to share more context as well, Mr. Liesma and Manager Mikesell, but this has been an ongoing process of going on 2 years. I mean, you guys might have been working on this longer than that, but in terms of what had come to the commission, this first came to the commission towards the beginning of last year, where you had given just a conceptual presentation, I think, like what you were wanting to do with the property and so on, so on and so forth. It was, I think, done by Zoom at that time, and then months later, you had come back with that development agreement that the commission ultimately approved in October. There was also a plan unit development that had been approved, that had gone through the planning commission. So the planning commission had its own hearing, then it came to the city commission, the commission had its own public meeting and deliberation. And then fast forward to this year, there's been an additional planning commission public hearing on an amendment to that plan unit development, and there's been additional public meetings on discussion of this cooperative use agreement and what Adelaide Point entails. And so it's been ongoing, long time coming project with several public meetings and discussion and deliberation about it and changes, and there's going to be many more to come too.
Ready to go.
This isn't the end of it. This is kind of the beginning of the formally we're getting underway, getting things. Well, you're getting things constructed, pending permit from our state.
Correct. Yeah.
On the marina and whatnot. So if you want to give some more context to the process, and if you want to, I know last night you presented on what Adelaide Point entails. If you, not everyone that's watching or is in this room here right now may have seen that or heard about that last night. So if you want to go into any detail or top level explanation of what your project is.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a very verbose individual, as I think a lot of people know. So if anybody wants me to cut it loose and stop, just give me the look. So talking about what our next phases are, we are looking at the Eagle permit. is really kind of the next phase. Getting that done, the development agreement kind of lays the groundwork for me to get financing so we can, get moving on things. It also gives me the assurance that, we won't be killing our boat storage business in order to develop the north side of the campus. This, again, is about balance. We need to take the cash flows that are coming from the business in order to fuel the development. And they feed off of each other, right? So this is part of the hard process of cranking the motor over by hand and getting it going, right? This is a huge step. The Eagle permit is a big step. That was a very long process. I mean, the DNR and Eagle, obviously, they don't look at projects like this very often. In fact, this is, really the first major marina construction project that's taken place in the state of Michigan for about 30 years. So, the emphasis is super on how do we do this right? So, the reputation of Eagle and the DNR is that they say no and nobody knows why, and it seems so unreasonable. And so I didn't have any experience in working with Eagle at first, but Assistant Director Sanders really helped me kind of understand how Eagle thinks and how that's going to play into what we're doing, right? And so Eagle is effectively the steward of the public trust, which means all waters and all bottomlands in the state of Michigan. The people of the state of Michigan actually own the water. They actually own the bottomlands underneath. And by statute, Eagle is required to do three things: avoid, don't do it if you don't have to, minimize it if you have to, and then mitigate whatever you had to do. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the lens that they view everything, right? And there's 5 major categories of items that go into what they're looking at in this project, right? And our goal was, and going back to some of your comments, our goal was to actually make everything better in those 5 categories. So I can kind of go through what those are a little bit. So the first one is the rock wall, right? And for people that have been around the lake and maybe they boat, we've got big waves on Muskegon Lake, right? I mean, 6 feet tall, 6-second periods, which is half of the distance of the ocean because we're in freshwater, and it beats everything up, everything, right? Perfect example would be looking at our shoreline. Another example would be looking at the Muskegon Yacht Club and their wave attenuator, which has basically gone from being, damaged terribly to having to get fixed, and then it gets damaged again and it gets fixed, right? And it's not a sustainable solution. This is a big lake, right? So in doing all the math in the American Society of Civil Engineers Manual 50 on proper harbor protection, right? That manual, basically, it's a national standard. It dictates the use of a rubble rock wall, right? Well, we don't want to cover up the bottomlands unnecessarily, right? We want to have it, have as small of an impact as we possibly can. So what we did is we actually put that rubble wall right up against the shoulder of the historical spit underneath the water, right? That's actually only about 2.5 feet deep right now. By actually working with the site, we're able to minimize the impact, right? So we specifically put it there, right? We also minimize the height of that rock wall by taking all the transient dock and tying it together with high tensile steel cable, like this, huge. And the idea is that because we lowered the height of the wall, if we happen to have a once 100-year storm and we're at high water, we absolutely will have water that goes over the top of the wall. But because the dock is so strong and tied together, it will also act as a secondary barrier to make sure that we're protecting the harbor. But we couldn't avoid it, right? We minimized it as much as we possibly could. But then we mitigated what we were doing by using natural Michigan fieldstone to create habitat where it never existed. This is a net new improvement, right? So we took something that we had to do, we minimized the impact as much as we could, and then we actually went above and beyond what was there before, because there is no fish. There's no fish that's right there by the edge because there's no vegetation down there, right? So this is a big improvement. So the second thing is the dock, right? So the dock actually floats on the water, so we're not putting pilings in, and we have to have the dock, obviously, for people to put their boats, right? But we minimize the impact by not using pylons that get driven into the bottomlands, right? We're using floating dock, which is also great because, as the water goes up and down in Muskegon Lake, we're able to adapt to it. But one of the things that comes into play when you're putting in any kind of dock is that it will block some of the light, right? Now, every marina out there has absolutely no consideration for that. They're just kind of like, whatever, it's dock, right? But we voluntarily put together a package to plant native species that survives and thrives on lower levels of light. Never been done in the state of Michigan. Because right now, we have stony starwort or starry stonewort or whatever it is, I can't remember, which is an invasive species which has very, very low nutritional value, which is why there's no fish and the only thing people can get is these little tiny gobies, right? So we actually are planting low light native species in order to improve what's already there, right? Now that has to happen after we dredge, right? Because we have to deepen it. Again, ASCE Manual 50 safe harbor navigation requirements. Again, this is a national standard that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers uses. This is what the DNR uses. This is what every state in the country uses as their standard, right? And they give you a range. We minimized it as much as we possibly could, even to the extent that we don't have enough depth to dredge, to do maintenance dredging. So it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. Because if you ever did need to dredge again, now we have a problem with the amount of depth that we have, right? Literally minimized it as much as we possibly could. On the mitigation side, what we are removing from the bottom is foundry sand. It's not the historical bottomlands. This is all garbage that got thrown in as a byproduct of the industrial process. It's basically just dune sand, right? So nothing really of high nutritional value can grow down there, which is why it's all just an invasive species and starry stonewort, right? We minimized it. Nobody has ever in the state of Michigan mitigated a dredging project. I got that directly from the assistant director of Eagle, right? It was my idea because I am committed to doing the right thing by the environment. I voluntarily am planting native species over the entire bottomlands. I am sinking logs and things that will help fish and habitat, right? I mean, literally never been done, right? And I told the director that, and he was like, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, we've never asked anybody to do that. And it's like, well, we're not about doing it like, the way everybody else has done it, right? So the wetlands, right? If you walk around those peninsulas, what do you see around the edge? Garbage, concrete blocks, rusty barrels, slag, nasty stuff that you would never let your kids walk through, right? What are we doing? We are voluntarily putting in $1.5 million to fix those peninsulas, put them back to the way they were in 2013, and cover it in native species. Nobody has ever done that. Nobody. And especially on riparian access waters like Muskegon Lake. Right? So when we're talking about the environment, yes, it's absolutely 1,000% critical. And I agree with what you were saying 100%, right? But what happened in the past...
Mr. Leisman, make sure you're
sorry.
comments to the commission.
What happened in the past is that people did what they wanted to benefit their pocketbook at the expense of the environment, at the expense of the people, and we all know that that's non-sustainable. We all know it doesn't work. What is the south shoreline of Muskegon Lake historically? The place that has the most environmental injustice than anywhere except Detroit. That's not right. That's not right. Well, how do we fix that? Right? We make all these environmental improvements. There is no dichotomy between doing the right thing for the public and the environment and making money. There is no dichotomy. If someone says that there is, they're just either not rethinking the problem, they're not intelligent, or they don't want to figure it out, right? And I absolutely think we can do all these things so that we can create something fantastic. Like I started my solar energy company about 3 years ago after I figured, well, I mean, what's the business case on it? You know, it makes sense. It's cool. I've driven an electric car since 2012. You know, I'm, you know, big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio, right? I mean, you know, I like the environment. And what I found out when I looked at solar was that I could generate a kilowatt hour of electricity after paying my bank interest expense for 4 cents a kilowatt hour. 4. It costs 15 to 17. I like saving money, right? I like getting a return on my investment, right? And I also like saving the environment and improving the environment at the exact same time. And so I think we can do that. You know, a lot of these things have never been done, right? But I'm a demonstrated innovator since I was 15 years old, right? I did it starting a computer company at 15. I built them by hand. I sold against Gateway 2000. Right? I mean, I started my technology company. I built it into one of the largest technology companies in West Michigan. Right? We introduced renewable energy to all of my buildings and electric vehicle charging, you know, 3 years ago. You make more money, by the way, when customers see that you're actually paying attention to the environment and you're implementing renewable energy technologies, right? They call it the, you know, green premium, right? But it's real. And all the stuff that I'm talking about here, introducing mass timber, I am an innovator. 100%, right? Well, when is the best time to start innovating? Right now. When is the best time for Muskegon to reinvent itself? Right now, right? And I get it. Some people haven't gone along with the process that I went through, which has been extensive, you know. I mean, you could make an argument I've been doing it since 2012, but, you know, starting a solar company and figuring out how to make money and things and working on this project, doing all the research, how do I build it, mass timber, I mean, you know, I've learned so much about environmental stuff over the past year and a half especially. It's enough to make your brain hurt, right? Plus, none of these consultants are cheap. They cost a fortune, especially when you get the best guys you can find, right? And it's all come together. People weren't part of that process. I guess I never considered how to do that, right? I never considered how do you take members of the public and integrate them into, you know, individual meetings that you have with consultants to talk about ideas and how do I mean, I you know, personally a private sector guy, like I never really considered doing that, right? And, you know, I guess theoretically it's not my responsibility, but this is a project that absolutely 100% impacts everybody, right? And so, you know, to the extent that I gather new information, I change and I direct, and I, you know, flexibility is one of my 3 pillars. We talked about it yesterday, right? And that means when somebody made a comment of, you know, like, we don't have enough information. I spent my Sunday putting together a PowerPoint presentation that I recorded and threw up on the internet. Here's all the information here you go, right? Put together a mini documentary, right? Actually bringing forward the experts, the best people anybody could find. In fact, some of these other waterfront projects are using my guys because they're the best, right? So, I get it, you know. Lon Gumby is up there saying he's going to do this with the waterfront, and, you know, like, who is this guy, right? I mean, I get it, right? Change is, hey, the least amount of risk is to do nothing, right? But doing nothing isn't progress. Innovating is progress. And, you know, I think the first time the reason it didn't work is because, you know, we tried to wrap up so many ideas, and, you know, the attorneys tried to, you know, grab every dot and tittle, and, you know, it doesn't work, right? I mean, this is a project that's a team effort. We're going to have to figure stuff out as we go along, right? Do you trust your partner? Do you trust them? Because it's easy to say no, but then nothing gets done, right? And so all I can really say is, you know, to the extent that we're going to have to figure it out, we're going to have to adjust on the fly. People are going to have to be willing to not just sit behind their keyboard and just start throwing out daggers and saying, I don't like this, and not participating, and then, you know, bitch and complain about it, right? It doesn't do anything for anybody. But with transparency and a willingness to be transparent, which I absolutely am and I absolutely have demonstrated, I think we can make sure that we can keep everybody calm and we can do something that's transformative and innovative for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Leesma. certainly appreciated the additional insights. I know you shared a good amount of that last night, but I certainly appreciate those additional insights with regard to the dredging, the impacts, the mitigation, and your mindfulness of the ecosystem there. And I think it's part and parcel with the other environmentally friendly and sustainable aspects of the development, incorporating solar energy, incorporating that mass timber, incorporating electric infrastructure to accommodate electric vehicles and electric boats. I think there's a lot to like in that regard. This cooperative use agreement that we discussed and deliberated on last night and then we're voting on tonight it codifies public access to his existing private peninsula as well as the extended peninsula, and then enables him to use our peninsula, well, the boat basin, to accommodate his in and out service. And so long as he's using the in and out service, we will have public access to those other two peninsulas. And at the same time, this envisions Adelaide Point Development investing in the enhancements and improvements to our public peninsula. It has been in poor shape, gated, exclusionary for the most part in recent years, which is unfortunate, not in the greatest shape. And so I'm eager to see investments and upgrades made to that and enhancements for public access. So I like the focus on enhancement from my perspective. I like the enhancement on public access and expansion on public access, and the fact that we're creating new opportunities for recreation and economic development that's going to support not only your project, but support other small businesses in our area, and while also generating additional tax revenues. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to be mindful as a commission and as a city of our fiduciary responsibility and our fiscal responsibilities. And so tax revenues are a key part of that. And so being able to create new revenues that we can then use to invest in other capital improvements and programming and services across our city to support and benefit our citizens, I think that's incredibly important as well.
And I just want to make a quick comment about, like the word exclusive. The whole purpose behind that was to do traffic control, right? Because, we got to keep people safe. Public safety is of paramount importance. That's why I'm giving Sheriff Poulin some space, right? So it was never meant to be one of those things where it's like, this is mine and you can't touch it. I mean, that wasn't the intention. The intention was that we don't want to have moms with strollers that are accidentally coming, too close to heavy equipment and things like that. But I think, again, that's kind of one of those things that we can kind of work on and work out as we go along.
All right, thank you, Mr. Leesma. Commissioner, do you have any questions for Mr. Leesma while he's up here? I know we had a lot of conversation yesterday, but we are open to more questions, though. Commissioner Emery.
It's not really my question. I'm reading a Facebook question. Is the Muskegon Lake Watershed Partnership supportive of your development?
Yes, we have a letter of support from the MLWP.
Wonderful. Thank you. I do have another question. Okay.
That's what we're here for.
Just to set the record straight, we are not selling the city. We, as in the city, are not selling any property to Adelaide Point.
Correct.
Nope.
That's correct.
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 Never asked for it either.
Please hear that, people. We are not selling property, our lakefront, to them. This is a private development.
Yeah, some people, there's a peninsula there that has been commonly used by the public, so there may be a perception that it is public already, but it is privately owned and just has had, both this property owner and the prior property owner just did not gate that peninsula and keep the public at bay. It was right off of our bike path, which we do own and will continue owning. And so there may be this perception that it was already public, but it wasn't. It was for a private peninsula, and we're going to be codifying that public access.
Yes, that's just to set the record straight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery.
Yeah, I mean, there's some level of precedent too, where there has been some organizations that have used the exact same space, and that is not without precedent at all. I mean, like for instance, there was I think it was Marquette that they actually built a giant forklift well, travel lift well, for 200-ton capacity, right? Specifically for the purpose of attracting commercial interests, and they all paid like a piece of like a lease or something like that, right? So I mean, it's fairly common for corporations to use civil infrastructure. It's good for everybody. Now, again, it comes down to balance, right? So, like, we need to make sure that we are not interfering with the public as much as we possibly can, right? But at the same token, and it'll be fine anyway, because most of our stuff is done between, the hours of 8 and 5 anyway. We're launching boats twice a year, in the spring and the fall, and it's not like it's every day for 2 months, all day long. It starts slow, and then they drop off their boats at the end of the day, and then we pull them in the morning at 8 or 9 o'clock. And, in fact, Dennis Kirksey, who used to own the west half, he's the chairman of the MLWP, and he was a big, big part in helping us make sure that a lot of this stuff is there. So, but I can say that the commission 100% has, my cooperation and support in working with them all the way across the board. I think everybody on Facebook has my cell phone number now, right? But, questions, concerns, same thing with the public, call me, we'll work it out. It's easy. Small problems to get big progress, I think. But.
Thank you. Any other questions or remarks? Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Excellent project. Put a lot of work, thought. Hey, I'm impressed. I've never seen anything like that. My concern, as we talked last and yesterday, was about public access, and you kind of explained the public access to the peninsulas and around the other areas, just not in the boat slips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you said that was due to privacy protection of
security,
the property, and stuff like that as well. And you also mentioned that the people in the state owns the water.
Yes.
Which that's water within that area. So
yes.
People should have access to that because they own that. Now, the city is looking to, in this cooperative agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, Manager Mike Sell, to give the rights to them at Lemon Park to privatize. Well, that's kind of, it's not privatizing, but it kind of seems like privatizing because it's not open to the public. And they can't go into that boat slip area.
That boat slip. So if you're talking about the area shaded in green on the screen,
right up in here. Yeah,
that is private. That is not city owned.
That is not city owned. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Okay,
But it will have a public easement.
okay.
It will have a public easement.
Now
Correct.
that clarifies. Okay.
So it's just, we want to make sure that people who are storing their boats there, throughout the season, that it's secure. It's very, very typical. It's, it's even at Hartshorn, right? It's just typical. You have to provide that level of security. But on the transient dock, which follows the break wall, that will be public, right? Now, I can tell you that after hours, there will probably somebody, patrolling the perimeter and making sure that, everything's all well and good. But like I said yesterday, there's kind of this expectation. It's like parking in a hotel parking lot a little bit. It's like, you're kind of in the domain of the public anyway. And, Commissioner German, going back to what you were saying about, the public owning, people of the state of Michigan owning the water, right? So, that's part of the reason why we are upgrading our break wall into something that is walkable, right? So, in my conversations with Eagle and the DNR, I'm very certain what's going to happen is that's part of the brokering process of coming up with a great solution for everybody, and that public walkway is going to be effectively the benefit of the public trust that we're going to be creating, right? Same thing with the transient dock, right? So that is a discussion that I'm having with Eagle. Once I'm able to put together, that deal, because really, we can all talk about this, but if Eagle doesn't play ball, nobody plays ball. It's a great idea that has no legs, right? But I fully anticipate on that working out, and then I'm totally cool with, dropping another easement on top of that. We can belt and suspenders the public access, which is great, I believe in it, so why not? But that's something I'm working out with Eagle, so.
Thank you. Now, will this be, and I hear what you're saying, Mr. Leesma, is this going to be in the actual agreement itself? Everything that we're talking about, to make sure that everything that's discussed goes into this agreement.
Yeah, it's presently in the agreement.
Yeah.
About access to
Yeah.
his peninsulas, and then
The
access
part that
to
I
our
read,
peninsula.
yeah. Okay, and then, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Any other questions or remarks, commissioners? No? All right. Where do we go from here? After we adopt this, and what are the next steps? And
Yeah, my time is up.
Or my time is up.
Yeah, so if this gets approved, then our next step is a brownfield reimbursement agreement that we're already working on. It's in the hands of our attorneys. And that will need to go to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for approval and to this body for approval. And then once we have that set, then we will work on each phase and talk about what would be in each phase and what the costs associated with that would be and what our agreement is with APQ on what we're financing and how it gets paid back through the brownfield.
okay. And so we'll have that, and then there'll be subsequent addendums or amendments potentially to this agreement. This is just the core going forward.
This means we're going steady.
All right.
Sorry.
And then Director Ekholm.
Yes, sir.
Could you speak to? I know we've had a number of different conversations about a public forum, not just specific to this development of property, but our shoreline in that area with regard to Hartshorn, our marina, the Hartshorn, what's commonly known as Hartshorn Village, which I hope that we can just dispense with calling it Hartshorn Village and Marina because it is not our marina. So it's Hartshorn Village, Hartshorn Marina, which is ours. Hartshorn Village is private property. There's Adelaide Point. There's Furcanos nearby. So there's a number of different entities. And we got Shaw Walker across the way.
the
We heard
Watermark
about
building,
a different developer last night that's interested in and redeveloping that. And so can you speak to how we're going to be engaging the community in that whole area?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So what I'd start with is a forum similar to that of that we did for Harbor 31, but much earlier in the process. What I'd like to do is now that we've gotten, this presumably, this mutual access, now we're going to start working, as the manager mentioned, about, who's building what and who's paying for what through Brownfield TIF. And so those are going to be commitments of public funds and trust. And so before we get too far down that road, I want to have a public forum that's very much discussion based, very much, presentation with Q&A. As Ms. Cross, a citizen, gave in public comment yesterday. I thought that one that we did for Harbor 31 was quite successful. It was well attended. We got a lot of notes, which we summarized, and it actually yielded some changes to the site plan, some potential public-private partnership on the lakefront, which could feature some public restrooms and some sort of public amenity in the Harbor 31 plan. So it proved that it could, affect change with public feedback. So the next step for this project would be a forum such as that. I plan on working with various community groups to help with that in the coming weeks. I don't have a date certain.
Okay.
And then, to your question about what we kind of call that lower western area in the NIMS neighborhood. Now, at this point, we pretty much have every property engaged, right? And so, pending closing on the Shaw Walker building. So, what I would propose is we probably are going to have project-specific forums for folks to give opportunities for feedback. But I also think there's probably a lot of room to have some really concerted and intentional public engagement on that entire corridor. And it probably makes the most sense to partner with the NIMS Neighborhood Association and then the Watershed Partnership to pursue those. Now that we have pretty much every major project that needed to be done down there over the last 20 years kind of on the verge of getting started, so at various stages of development. So that's the vision I see that I've kind of discussed with you and others in the community as well as my staff. We felt positive about that Harbor 31. It was kind of an experiment, so I'd like to continue that and kind of set that out as the standard.
Yeah, thank you, Director Ekholm. Looking forward to those forums. Commissioners, while we have our Development Services Director up here, do you happen to have any questions for him?
about this or anything?
Just, I mean, about
roundtable.
next steps with regard to, yeah. No, we're good?
How are we going to affect the lack of sturgeon in Muskegon Lake and the Great Lakes as a whole?
Don't fish
Okay.
for them. Yeah, don't fish
them
for
and
them.
don't
That's a
disturb
good
their
start.
spawning
Okay.
grounds.
Yeah, I'm
Just wanna
given.
make sure.
I'm given to understand that's not okay.
Yes.
As was made clear last night, we do not fish sturgeon, and we do not encourage fishing of sturgeon in our lake or it's the tributaries of the Muskegon River. They are protected. All right. Thank you, Director Ekholm.
Thank you.
And then if there's nothing else, roll call, please.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Next up, our final item on the agenda, still under new business. Thank you, Ms. Leesma. Take care and be well. B, designation of voting delegates for the Michigan Municipal League annual meeting. There's not a designees in here, so we get to discuss that and decide on that. So we don't have a motion yet, but I hope that all are going to be at this convention. We have the honor and privilege of hosting this year's Municipal League, Michigan Municipal League convention. It's going to be October 19th through the 21st. It's going to be at our Van Dyke Mortgage Convention Center. And so I hope all of our commissioners are going to be attending and participating as much as they can, as well as our staff and our own clerk, Ann Mish is going to be presenting at this convention, as well as I believe our planner, Jamie Pesh, is going to be presenting. This is going to be a lot of, so take a look at that agenda. There's a lot of opportunities to participate. I hope we all are there and doing so. There is some formal business as a member of the Michigan Municipal League that we have to conduct, and that's why we need to designate a voting member and an alternate. And so, what's your pleasure in terms of who's going to be our voting member?
What's been the protocol historically? Hasn't it been the mayor and the vice mayor?
The mayor, the vice mayor, the mayor, the manager. Depends on who's there. So sometimes we don't have everyone there. This time I hope that we have everyone there. But typically, yes, it's the mayor and the vice mayor, or the mayor and the manager, or sometimes the mayor and the clerk, or the manager and the clerk, depending on who's able to be there. But I will be there. Our clerk will be there. I hope all of us are there.
Well, then I would, based on the conversation we just had, I would motion that we have the mayor and the city clerk be those two members.
Support.
Support.
Everybody supports.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Ramsey, supported by Commissioner Hood, to designate the mayor as the voting member, designated voting member, and the city clerk as the alternate voting member for the convention. Any questions or comments? All right, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, any other business? Commissioners, I would like to, do you have to run?
No, I have another business.
Okay, I was going to bring up our public safety director to acknowledge him. Would you like to do that? You want me to reserve that to the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're on deck, though, so you know I'm about to bring you up there. Director Kozel. So, Commissioner Ramsey, your any other business?
Yeah, I would like to invite Director Evans back up to the microphone, please. I just have a couple questions, Leo. Actually, that's a lie, Leo. I don't have any questions. I would like for you to talk about the construction that's going on in Terrace and give us a timeline and share with all of our neighbors, because for some reason that seems to be very convoluted with the stuff that's will eventually be happening on Shoreline, and that's clearly not. So just talk about what's going on there and the timeline that we as a city look at for that project being complete.
Yeah, so we started work last week, right after the Labor Day holiday. The schedule that we have in front of us is that the road will be completed and open to traffic on or around November 15th. As of being a week into construction, we're still doing good on that schedule, but we still got a long ways in front of us. So that's kind of what we're working towards, is have that road totally done and reopen to traffic by November 15th, and then probably wrap up some things maybe into early December or even next spring by the time we get grass planted and kind of growing in a good state.
Great. And in the meantime, Leo, how do we suggest people navigate downtown and the businesses that are right there on the frontage of Terrace so that they can be patronized and no one is losing out, eh?
Yeah. So right now the closure is in place from Shoreline Drive to Webster, where there is no access on Terrace. So any of those businesses that front on Terrace Street, say Marat's or the Cheese Lady or anything like that, we have kind of built-in access off of the side streets to all of those businesses. So you'll have to think ahead a little bit and figure out what side of Terrace Street do you need to be on, and then kind of come up to Terrace from Clay or Western or any of those side streets that provide access. And then there are driveways out there. I believe we did also install some signs to help direct to the specific businesses. I haven't been out to see them yet, but I know they were working on that to try to help guide customers to get to where they need to be. So
yeah, great. So today I visited the Cheese Lady in Marat's, and I did that by taking the Western that's out by Buick, or taking Pine up, and you go in through the back way. I'm not sure about anything on this side of Terrace, but I just want to give people the opportunity to ask those questions, maybe call the clerk's office if they're not understanding on how they can navigate that situation, so that our local businesses don't feel any further hurt from what's a beautiful project when it's all said and done, right? Right. Thank you, Leo.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramsey. Thank you, Director Evans. And thank you for the reminder of patronizing our businesses that are going to be having to navigate the challenging transit environment for.
Well, because I remember when we did this on Laketon and Wayne's Deli, you couldn't get in and out of Wayne's Deli in any way that was and they had a huge issue, and we almost lost Wayne's Deli, and that's a Muskegon icon. And so I don't want any of our downtown businesses to suffer, and if there's anything we can do to help mitigate the situation, while we know that we have to do these wonderful improvements, let's do so.
Indeed. And our Lakeshore businesses and Lakeside remember this, and they're encouraging people to go shop at these businesses downtown, so they know what the impact can be, and so it was nice to see them encouraging folks to go to those Terrace Street and surrounding area businesses.
Buy cheap.
Keep them alive. And thank you. Now, DPW did also work to add an egress to a parking lot.
Yes.
To better accommodate or access the Cheese Ladies parking lot. So that was nice. All right. Any other business? Okay. Director Tim Kozel, our new Public Safety Director. If you would come up here and introduce yourself and welcome to our city. You're 2 weeks into the job now?
Just started.
Thereabouts, or yeah.
Just started my 10th day, but I'd like to make a motion to bring up Director Evans again. No, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I just had to throw that in there. So.
We like levity.
We love it.
No, it's the 10th day. We've been doing a lot, and been to a lot of meetings. And seemed like every hour an hour I have something going on. But I've been able to start my small group meetings within the departments. That's going very, very well. Outlining my expectations and then finding out from them what they have their expectations of me. And their short-term and their long-term goals. So it's been very beneficial, all these meetings that I've had already. So it's exciting. It's great to be able to work with Captain Rush. I thanked him for everything he did since Director Lewis left up to my taking my seat. So he did a wonderful job, and it's great having him there, and it's a right seat, left seat. So he told me that on Friday, which I don't have much on my plate. He's going to drive Miss Daisy around a little bit and tell me a little bit more about what's going on within Muskegon. So I look forward to that.
Excellent. I know you met with our neighborhood associations of Muskegon last week as well, and we've been speaking with our school system also, and so you're proactively engaging our community also. It's not just about what's happening within these walls of City Hall.
So I had an opportunity to go down. Chief Sane invited me down to a forum. It was about an hour-and-a-half forum on reducing gun violence in the Heights in the city. That was I was glad I was able to be a part of that, and briefly meet a lot of people with different organizations within Muskegon. So I was glad I was part of that also today.
Awesome. Well, It is great to have you. Welcome to our city. I'm thrilled with you coming aboard and look forward to working with you and your leadership in public safety and partnership with our community as well. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Manager Mike Zell.
I guess if it's okay, I just wanted to remind all of the commissioners that we do have a joint meeting with the Muskegon Public School Board next Tuesday. So if you have any comments for me for that meeting or questions, please reach out to me. But just if you're at all able to attend, please do.
Next Tuesday, September 20th, starting at 5 or 5:30?
Yes, I think 5.
5 p.m. And the school board does, at Muskegon Public Schools, their boardroom, because they have a 7 p.m. meeting of just their board. So they've got their regular business to attend to that night. And so we're doing a joint meeting before their regularly scheduled board meeting. Yep. And then also, folks, you might have read about it or heard about it, but we are in the process or about to be interviewing 6 candidates, our interim city manager included, Lee and Mike Zell. We're about to interview 6 candidates this Friday, September 16th. It's going to be in the commission chambers right here, starting at 9 a.m., and we'll be interviewing the 6 candidates throughout the day. The day before, on Thursday, September 15th, there'll be a couple opportunities for the public to meet these candidates and engage with them. One of which is going to be a cruise aboard the Aquastar, launching from Mart Dock, and that's going to be launching at 11:30, and the boat ride will be about an hour and a half, so 11:30 to 1. I believe there's still some tickets available, so you can either call the clerk's office and get those tickets, or go to aquastar.com to reserve your tickets for that. And then there's an open house that's going to be in the commission chambers that evening, 6 to 8 p.m. We will be serving refreshments as well. At the beginning of it, we'll give each candidate a few minutes to give introductory remarks about themselves, and then it's just going to be open format, meet and greet, mingle, and have conversations with the candidates. And then you're welcome to give your impressions to the commission, and we'll carry that forward as we do our interviews and then deliberate on who we want to hire. This is probably the most important decision that this commission will make. Our city manager is an incredibly important part of this organization and leader in our city, who manages and is our chief administrative officer in managing our city on a day-to-day basis. So I encourage people to come out, or otherwise reach out with your input and feedback. So unless there's any other business, I'm going to go on to public comment. All right. So we've got a few folks. Let's see. We got Renice Starr.
Well, I would just like to say,
If you could come up to the mic, and you have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
well, actually, after sitting within this meeting, I would just like to say this has been an awesome learning experience. I would say that Vice Mayor German has really inspired me to become more into our city and the things that we're doing around here. And this has been exciting. I really don't have a comment now. I've learned a lot, and I've seen a lot of different things that helped me understand the process a little better. And I hope to participate in this process really soon and do some things as well, if allowed. And this is just a great learning experience. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we always welcome you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. We have Derek Olson returning. Welcome back.
I think that a lot of people are frustrated about the road diet. I just wanted to say one thing about it, just because, and I God bless you, Commissioner German, for trying to fish out what is the goal. Like, and there's a lot of talk about this road diet. What I haven't seen is what is the plan that you want to accomplish by shutting down one lane of traffic. Like, I haven't seen any, like I get it, you say you want to cut the lanes down and make it more accessible, but I guess for the public and for me, I don't see the merit of spending all the money without seeing what the goal would be. What would we want to have happen? Like, I get it, you want to learn about traffic, and that makes sense, but like with what and what end? And I'm fearful for the future of our lake, and I know that Blonde Gumby, by his own name calling, is doing a wonderful job, and he's a terrific innovator, and there's cookies being handed out all over, but he's down here because it's going to make a ton of money. This property is worth tons of money. There are going to be more, and Leedsama's the first of these developers that are going to come, and they're going to try to develop our lake. Right now, it's our lake. The more we put docks that float and capture what was our water that now you can't go in. Like, you used to be able to kayak there. Now you can't kayak in there. There's a big thing. It's closed off. There's wooden docks. It's private property in the middle of the lake. And there haven't been a lot of these marina projects because they're so damn offensive, because they take over a big chunk of the lake, a huge middle chunk of the lake. And this commission has a responsibility to continue to be the stewards of Muskegon Lake and not let the last 40 years of cleaning it up go to waste. And Leedsama's, they're lovely people, and the development, I'm sure, it's incredible. Yes, it makes all of us go, we all want developments like this in our city, but on our lake that we just spent $80 million in 40 years cleaning up, we don't need it. We don't need that. And there's more of them coming. And I'm so afraid that this commission, who gave away a chunk of the beach and let a giant private property construction happen on a public park on the beach, is now giving away a big chunk of our lake, and that I'm afraid that you're going to continue to give away these things to these developers that have cost us $80 million, people's lives' work, and have cost this community tons and tons and tons of money and time and effort. To flush it all down the toilet for a bunch of boats is bullshit. And I'm sorry to swear at the end of it, but I'm very passionate about it, and I just have fear. I see fear that we're going to flush this beautiful clean lake down the toilet with boats and giant cement docks. And they're coming. There's more, man. They want to develop all of this stuff, and this guy is the first one. And you guys, we need you guys to be our defense to protect this lake. And God bless the city of Muskegon. God bless all of you, and thank you so much for everything that you do. But I have fear. I have fear that this commission is going to continue to develop the lakeshore and give away things that we shouldn't. And we needed to. 10 years ago, development was we needed to beg developers to come to Muskegon. 15 years ago, this town was a dump downtown. I agree. There were lots of things that were bad. And now it's really nice, and they're going to keep coming, man. And we got to say what's in it for us more than Leedsama. What else is in it for us?
Thank you, Mr.
And there's going to be more. They're coming.
Thank you, Mr.
Be ready.
All right. This is the extent of the forms that I have for public comment. She left.
Oh. Okay.
Is there anyone else that wishes to give public comment? No. All right. I believe she left. I saw her leave. Is Darlene DeHootie?
She left.
Okay. All right. Well, seeing no others wishing to give public comment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
I have a motion by Commissioner Ramsey, supported by Commissioner St. Clair to adjourn. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care. Be well.